Thank you. After lunch, I think it's better to start with a short, relaxing video introducing the Italian way, and I think you must see this one so you better understand how we are developed our law on the loudness control.
Caffè. 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 Espresso macchiato caldo. Decaffeinato bollente e poca schiuma. Molto lungo, tiepido in tazza grande. Caffè d'orzo, macchiato freddo, doppio zucchero. Ristretto semifreddo in tazza piccola senza schiuma. Americano corretto grappa con latte, doppia panna, tazza a parte. Hello? Pronto?
In area, tiro, gol!
Okay. Okay, now I think you will better understand what's happening in Italy as concerning the law on loudness. But let's start this presentation with a brief history of advertising. Today and also a little bit yesterday, people talk for advertising as one of the most important problems for loudness control. And maybe not all of you know that the first official, because it seems that there has been something before, advertising on TV was in 1941 during, or maybe before a baseball game between Brooklyn and Philadelphia Phillips. And it was only a static picture with a voice saying America runs on Bull of Time. This is just for an historical information. And what is important to understand is if people really annoying of loudness in advertising, and there have been several polls, several research on this, and one of the most important is one done in UK that from about 10 years they monitoring how many complaints received the Association for Broadcast Advertising and Code, and they say that on the average they receive about 200 and 250 calls every year about people that complain about the loudness of advertising. This started from 10 years ago, but there are some new research on this, and especially in USA there was a recent poll last year where they asked to the consumer, to the subscriber, if they have problem in loudness, and they about 90% of the people say that there are problems and that loudness in advertising is quite annoying. So the problem seems to still exist, and in some way seems that it is growing during the last years. Also, in the official document from ABU, the technical document 3342, there is a short sentence that in some way expresses this very important point, that many of the, one of the most important causes that push us to analyze again the procedure for loudness normalization start exactly from advertising problem. But who should regulate the loudness in Europe? Who should in some way control and define the rule for this level? In principle, should be the authority on telecommunication. The problem is that in Europe we have how many? At least 45 authorities. So each of these one, in principle, according to the European law, should say something about the level of advertising or everything that in some way have to normalize and regulate the transmission for radio and television and so on. So they have in charge this kind of problem. But not only, we have also some transversal association, European, that in some way have to say something about this kind of problem, and one is the Association for Single Voice and Advertising, Self-Regulation, the other one is the one on telecommunication, but I think there are maybe more. In principle, very few of this body dedicated some attention to this problem. In particular, in UK, there is the BCAP that in some way is tied to Ofcom that have regulated officially how to control the loudness in advertising. In Poland, there is the authority that also emanated a law 1 year ago, and in Italy also there is a law now about how to regulate the loudness in the audio, in the radio and television transmission. The problem is that each country define its own measure, methods, threshold, and so on. So you can imagine what happens if in Europe each country will start defining a different methodology to measure or to control the loudness. It could be a very difficult situation, especially for people that produce instruments or something like that. But let's see in detail these three examples, how they work. In United Kingdom, there is this association that auto-regulate the code for advertising, not only, of course, for loudness. Loudness is only a small part, and you can find the rule about loudness in paragraph 4.7 of the code. The code has been just published in a new version last September, so more or less 9 months ago, and the rules are more or less the one they have before. They defined this rule 2 years ago, I think. And of course, there is a first sentence. You can find this kind of sentence more or less in all the European regulation, also in the American one, where there is a statement that in some way say that the loudness should not annoying the listener and should have the same level of the program. Of course, this from a technical point of view doesn't meaning a lot. So depending on the measure you see today, if you use getting, if you do not use getting, things are very different. So the sentence and the principle is clear, but the technical way to implement this principle is not clear at all. And in case of the BCAP solution, they have several possibilities. You can use peak meter, or you can use loudness defined in ITU 7070, and you have different threshold depending the solution you have choose. But of course, these are not compatible. I mean, you can say, okay, if your loudness is 60 dB louder in peak than the program, it's okay. Or you can say if the integrated loudness measured with the ABU or with the 7070 recommendation should be the same inside 1 dB and so on. But generally speaking, doesn't mean that you have a unique solution for controlling the loudness. So it's a good law, but in some way must be refined in terms to select only one methodology. And of course, we see this morning, probably the peak one is not the best one. So this kind of rule should be definitively formed as a measure only on integrated loudness. A completely different strategy was defined in Poland. They use the ITU 7070 as measure, but they only compare a small part of the handling of the program with the following advertising. So they only say, okay, I don't mind of integrated loudness and so on. I only to see if when the program finish and the advertising start, there is a jump, only in the last 30 seconds and the following 30 seconds. And this in some way is very similar to the first Italian solution that was published 3 or 4 years ago, but we, after a very short period of testing this solution, we found that it's not useful. So in Italy we have to change this, and I don't know what will happen in Poland, but today the law in Poland say that we have to compare the last half minutes of the program with the beginning half minutes of the advertising, and you have to do integrated loudness measure using the ITU 7070 and have the same level. So only the jump of program to advertising. The situation is quite different in Italy. It's probably the most complicated one, but you have one point that is very important, that it defines exactly how to get the comparison. Also, this process is quite complicated, but you cannot make any mistakes. Everything is defined very, very in detail. And this is the final situation, the one that is in law today. But as I said before, we start about 4 years ago. The law, the original law, that say that the loudness of advertising shouldn't be higher than the one of the program, is very old. It's 1995. So in 1995, in Italy, we already have a law that says that the power level of the advertising shouldn't be greater than the program. For about 15 years, nothing happened, because nobody knows what means sound power or something like that. And now, with the universal acceptance of the ITU standard, there have been some technical committee that have met with Agicom and with the broadcaster, with some institute, to define how to put all those things together and make a new law. Technically, they use on the basis of the ITU recommendation, but we apply gating. Also, when this one was published, the ABU 128 was not already a recommendation. So we used gating before it was a standard as today. And we only use the long-term reference for measuring the ordinary level that we will see later on. So in some way, from a technical point of view, we anticipated more or the most important steps in normalization and standardization, because 2 years ago we already used in some way a measure that is equal to the one that ITU published 2 weeks or 2 months ago, in March, 2 months ago. So we already define a measure based exactly on the same strategy that the one of ITU published in March of this year. So in some way, we made a very good solution from a technical point of view. But that's all.